Welcome to New Stripe City, a podcast for diehard Bengals fans. I'm your host, Ace Boogie, and today is our first episode back after our hiatus episode. So today I just wanted to talk about several things that have happened. We just saw the national championship take place this past Monday. A lot of guys in there that kind of flashed. So we'll talk about some of that stuff, but we'll also talk about the direction of where the Bengals are headed. So I'm not really gonna do a format on this episode. I really just want to talk to Who Dey Nation and voice my thoughts on some of the recent things that happened. So, kicking things off, you guys might have noticed on Monday that I dropped a mock draft, and I kind of wanted to kick off our discussion with the mock draft. So, if you checked out my mock draft, I had us taking Tim Williams, the edge rusher from Alabama, in the first round. I really like this guy. I've read up on him. I've seen a lot of scouts that are pretty high on him. He has the great natural ability to rush the passer. That first step is something that he has that separates him from a lot of these guys. Now, I'm not saying that he is, I would probably say, the best edge rusher for this class, but I think that he's one that has the most potential. Doing some research on him, I found out that he was compared to Lawrence Taylor, and the guy who actually compared him was the guy who actually drafted Lawrence Taylor. So typically, whether it's like another analyst or a draft expert, puts this whole bold comparison out there, I kind of don't put too much stock in it. But the fact that this guy was the guy who said this was the guy that actually drafted LT, I think it holds a little bit more weight. So I've been seeing, and I know you guys have seen them because I feel like we've been mocked to death with Derek Barnett. A lot of mock drafts have us going Barnett, but an interesting thing that I saw, and I kind of learned these things from last year coming up with my formula for prime. The Bengals have never taken a player that is younger than 22 in the first round. Okay, Derek Barnett is 20 years. He's about 20 and a half. So if the Bengals do pick him, it would be a first. Now, he does come from the SEC, which the Bengals tend to favor guys that do come from the SEC. But I just have a weird feeling that the Bengals would prefer Tim Williams. And Tim Williams, to me, has a higher ceiling just because if he gets it with the right coach, basically right now he's a monster just off of natural ability alone. But if he gets with a coach, he could become one of the top edge rushers in the league. And he's also 23 years old. So I think that he's a guy that fills a couple of boxes for the Bengals. And when you look at, some of the historic trends that they've had, some of the edge rushers that they've drafted in the past are guys that they've used there, such as David Pollock, James Harrison, Chris Carter. Carter and Pollock are very similar to Tim Williams' size. So Tim Williams is 6'3", 252. I know that's not official because we haven't had the combine yet. You never know. Players gain like 15 pounds, and 15 to 20 pounds, 20 if you play for Alabama. So there's no telling what his actual size will be, but he's a guy that really compares to what the Bengals have taken in the past at edge rusher, with David Pollock being that guy. The funny thing is, the Bengals have really never taken a true defensive end out of the first round. So Tim Williams is an interesting guy. Fills a lot of the holes that the Bengals typically, he actually checks off a lot of the boxes that the Bengals typically look for. So he's a guy that's 23. He played in the SEC from Bama. He's a guy that has played Sam linebacker, so that's kind of an open spot right now. But something interesting that I heard today, reading an article from the great Jeff Hobson from the Mothership, the Bengals interviewed, well, not the Bengals interviewed, but he interviewed Paul Gunther, and Paul Gunther had some interesting things to say about edge rushers. And he basically said that he's tired of making guys that are undersized or quote unquote undersized in a 4-3 scheme at the defensive end position. He's tired of teaching those guys the transition from defensive end to linebacker. And he's saying that if a guy's a linebacker, you play him at linebacker. If a guy's a defensive end, just play him at defensive end. It doesn't matter his size. And I totally agree with that. You've seen that the Bengals have tried this whole thing of picking undersized guys like Dante Moak and trying to make them play linebacker, and it just doesn't work out. So I think that that's pretty interesting, considering that Tim Williams is a linebacker. The Bengals have a wide open spot there at linebacker. Now Barnett is very good. I honestly think that he's going to be one of the best guys here that come off of the edge. I think he's definitely more pro ready in a sense than Tim Williams, and I'm not opposed to taking him at all. I saw a couple people upset that I actually picked him over Barnett, but I think it could go either way. But Barnett, to me, I believe, is a defensive end. So in order for him to get in, they probably had to keep him at defensive end, which I'm not opposed to either. But I feel like with this coaching staff and the way that Marvin Lewis does things, it would be hard for us to see him get in or make an impact. Now, it seems like Paulie is kind of taking more ownership over the defense, so maybe things will change. In that article today, he also stated how he wanted to play a lot more players, especially younger players, and basically said that it's pretty pointless to draft some guys if you're not going to play them, and then you get in a contract situation and you've never really seen the guy play. So very interesting things coming from him. The way that he was talking definitely seems like Andrew Billings is definitely going to start at nose tackle next year. He said that if Billings would have been healthy, he would have played a lot this year. So I thought that was pretty interesting. He also said that William Jackson III will get his possible chance to start next year. One thing that was, I don't know if it was, done on purpose or whatsoever, but they did not touch on, or Hobson didn't ask him any questions about Drake Kirkpatrick or Pac-Man. So I kind of wonder what's going on there. But anyways, back to the draft. Like I said, Tim Williams, this guy is natural. You turn on the film with this guy, he's got one of the best bursts out there. And he's a guy that I think, even if you pick him that first year, just off of his natural ability alone, he could end up being a great pick. His former coach, the guy who compared him to LT, says that the guy should be a top 3 pick. Now, during the national championship, he really didn't impress me too much. But to be honest with you, I was closer to actually selecting Reuben Foster here instead of Tim Williams. Closer to doing that than I was actually switching Barnett here. And Reuben Foster, he was actually the first guy that I watched. From the first time I saw this guy, it didn't matter that he was from Alabama. I'm not really a whole guy that's on the whole Roll Tide train or any of that. Because I feel like some of those guys are overrated, but he is not overrated. This guy, Reuben Foster, is a total package. We saw that on Monday night. And I almost was mad that I submitted this before that game because my gut told me to go with Reuben Foster. But I wanted to kind of switch things up because Foster and Barnett are the two guys that you see the most. And, over the past couple of years, when it comes to beat writers and some of these guys that are doing mocks, generally the guys that they pick aren't the guys that the Bengals actually end up picking. So I wanted to look in a different direction. But yeah, Reuben Foster, man, 12 tackles. Dude was all over the field. He did the helicopter hit on Deshaun Watson. Dude is just a monster, man. And I mean, it's like every single Bengals fan is on the same exact mission, is Operation Get Reuben Foster in the same lineup with Vontaze Burfict. That would be insane. Like if they had Burfict and him, it's just ridiculous. That's just like, it's not even fair. Okay, you got 2 smart linebackers, both of them can hit. You're bringing in a guy that can cover guys. I mean, this is almost like exactly what the Bengals would actually need, because right now it's like when I look at Tez and the rest of the linebacking core, I almost think of that old Cleveland Cavaliers team. It's like LeBron and then there's just everybody else, okay? So it's Tez and then there's just everybody else, okay? And I'm not down against Nick Vigil and all of that, but let's just be real, bro. Like, Nick Vigil is cool, but Nick Vigil is not Reuben Foster, okay? Carlos Dempsey, he's a very good player. I'm not even going to go there with him because he's got a pretty good history, track record, but, the athleticism that this guy has, it's just ridiculous. And you're talking about two guys that play with that same drive. Oh my goodness. But anyways, I made this. I have to stick with what I made, so I'm gonna stay with Tim Williams. But moving on to the second, this was a real interesting pick for me because me personally, initially when I first started looking at everyone, I really wanted Reuben Foster, but then I kind of looked at the team. I set my depth chart. I looked at certain weaknesses, and some people thought that I was kind of crying about the offensive line, but I mean, when your quarterback has been sacked over 40 times, dude, you can't just overlook that. And um, here I kind of went in a different direction. So initially, I kind of wanted Cam Robinson. But after taking Tim Williams, I felt like the next best guy to take was, and I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, but it's Ethan Posick or Posis, or however you say his name, out of LSU. And the reason I took him is because he has the ability to play center, right guard, and he's also played left tackle. He's also comes in at the same size that the Bengals kind of like their guards to be at. And he provides the Bengals flexibility, which is why I like him here. Okay, you got your two best linemen and Andrew Whitworth and Kevin Zeitler possibly testing free agency. Okay, you don't have an answer with Russell Bodine at center. You don't have an answer at right tackle with Cedric Ogbuye. And honestly, I'm not sold on Jake Fisher either. So you got some issues on the offensive line front. Not to mention, Jake Fisher is actually scheduled to become a free agent in 2019. Remember that he was a second round pick. And Cedric Ogbuye just was garbage. And I mean, I'm a big Witt guy, but I think that some of our fans kind of get carried away and they think that the guy's going to play until he's like 40. Like, Witt is 35 years old, bruh. Like, you're going to have to eventually replace him, okay? And Witt is definitely playing at a Pro Bowl level. To be honest with you, between Whitworth and Zeitler, I think that they actually keep Witt because he's going to be cheaper. I don't see them paying Kevin Zeitler $10.5 million a year, okay? Regardless of whether they have the money or not. There's several people out there saying, okay, well, why won't they just go ahead and cash both of them out? They have the money to do it. You have to realize, and I realized this last year, I really respect what the Bengals do. Okay, there's a lot of people that complain, that say they don't spend enough money. But after researching what they do, the Bengals do pay guys. They really do. And they make the right decisions. When you look at some of their contracts and how they set things up, what they do is they have guys that they kind of want to keep, and then they have guys that they really want to keep. You can always tell the guys that they really want to keep because they tend to try to negotiate with them a year before they are scheduled to become a free agent. They'll also roll over money to the next year to try to use that to retain these guys. Okay, so you saw last year that they reached out to Gio, tried to re-sign him. He was extended. You saw that they tried to reach out to Zeitler. So maybe that was a good sign. But what they do is if they don't sign those guys, then they let the guys test free agency. Okay? Now, that's where they kind of roll the dice, but they kind of let guys go out there and see what the actual market is. And usually the Bengals are really good at either matching what the market is offering for that player or deciding that that player isn't worth how much the market is paying him. For example, Mohamed Sanu, he was not worth $6.5 million. I don't know how that was even an option for Atlanta, but they're very good at doing that. And I don't think they get the kudos that they deserve. But what's going to happen is there's a lot of guys that have to get paid, bro. Let's just be real. Okay, they're expected to have about 40 million cap space, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they just have 40 million to just blow. Okay, so Andrew Whitworth got paid $9 million last year, right? So he's gonna make at least between 9 and 10.5 million, maybe 11 if his agent wants to be pretty bad about it. And then you got Kevin Zeitler, who's at least making 10.5 million. I mean, we just saw David DeCastro get 10.5 million, so or 10 million a year. So why wouldn't he? Then you've got Tyler Eifert. He's coming up because the Eagles just decided to pay Zach Ertz a whole bunch of money. I have no reason. I have no reason of why they did that. But they did it. I guess Zach Ertz is the future there. So because they wanted to pay, so yeah, they're just cashing out on Zach Ertz. I guess that's what's popping in the streets now. But anyways, that means that Tyler Eifert is gonna get paid. And I had a couple of discussions, I'll call it, between some guys on Twitter talking about, well, Eifert isn't gonna get paid. He's only played 37 out of how many games and blah blah blah. Like, dude, Tyler Eifert is a stud tight end. At the end of the day, he's a stud tight end. You got other plenty stud tight ends like Jordan Reed, Jeremy Shockey in the past, Julius Thomas. They're gonna get paid, bruh. Like, they're gonna get paid. And to me, the Bengals have some leverage with Eifert, but they really don't. Okay. Because when we look back at the season, what were the Bengals missing during the first portion of the season? Tyler Eifert, bruh. Like, it was apparent. So I'm not sure exactly if the Bengals truly have that much leverage with him. And then you're talking about a guy that's represented by CAA. This is a big sports agency, okay? And people seem to forget that players are represented by agents, okay? Most of the time, they're not talking to the players. They're talking to the agents. And the agents are about that money because they know that they're going to get their small percentage of whatever contract that these guys sign. So, of course, they're going for the biggest contracts possible. And if you think for a second that Tyler Eifert could not say, okay, you know what? I don't like this deal that you guys are offering me because I'm not taking less than Zach Ertz money. Zach Ertz is not better than me. I'll bet on myself to have another decent season, and then we'll see what the numbers are then. That's what you don't want to do, okay? We saw what just happened, and we saw how that backfired in two different situations outside of Cincinnati with Kirk Cousins and with Joe Flacco. Okay, you don't want to set yourself up from going from potentially 9 to 10 million a year to now having to pay Eifert 13 million a year, and him going back to having a reason to go and play somewhere else. Because if Tyler Eifert hits the market, bro, he's gone. I mean, who's not gonna sign Tyler Eifert? Let's just be real now, okay? And so you're talking about three guys there that you already would have to pay an average salary of $30 million a year, okay? And then you've got Dre Kirkpatrick, right? Dre Kirkpatrick was one of the most consistent corners this year. He played pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. I was kind of down on Dre initially, but Dre earned his stripes this year, man. There's no hating on him. But when you look at Dre, do you really think that he's gonna make less than Robert Alford, who's making $8 million a year, and this guy was getting trashed all over the field? Dre's gonna make at least probably between 9 to 10 to maybe even 11 million per year. Okay, that's just the going rate. Okay, the Bengals don't set the rate, so you're talking about 40 million already right there, and that's between guys from this year, next year, and you've got other guys that people really aren't thinking of down the line, like a Geno Atkins, where his contract expires in 2019, and a Carlos Dunlap, and those guys are going to have to get paid, okay? So the Bengals right now, the reason why it seems like it's affordable is because the majority of the deals that the Bengals had to get done, the big ones like Geno, like Dunlap, were done before the other guys who were around them signed. Okay? So Geno makes about $10 million per year average salary now. Okay? Sue makes 20. Geno's getting 20 in 2 years, whether you like it or not. And you know who else is up in 2018? Vontae's Burfict. He makes an average salary of about $5 million a year, which is pennies on the dollar for what he really will be commanding a year from now. You've got a guy, the guy out in Tampa Bay, who's making $10.5 million per year, plays the same position as Tez. You're gonna tell me that Tez isn't worth that money? You're gonna tell me that Tez doesn't want that money? So the Bengals are gonna have to pay a lot of guys. So I say that to say this: the Bengals have a method to their madness. Just because it seems like they have that money doesn't mean necessarily that they can spend all of that money. Okay, and then not to mention having money for draft picks, having money for actually assembling your roster. So you don't want to spend the bank and then you can't even fill an active roster. Okay, that's not what's popping in the streets. Plus, do you really want to pay all of that money for a guy like Drake Kirkpatrick? No offense to him, but are you really gonna pay that money when you have three other corners sitting behind him? Tough ask. But anyway, back to Postic. So, like I said, I see Witt coming back. I see Zeitler leaving. Okay. Now, luckily, Russell Bodine is scheduled to become a free agent. Hopefully, they'll finally let him go. Okay. And sometimes what the Bengals tend to do in drafts too is the year before they'll draft the replacement for a person that they possibly won't want to keep. I hope they do not even attempt to extend Bodine this season. So I like Posick because this is a guy that can step in at right guard or can step in at center. It's kind of flexible. Those are potentially going to be some weak positions if Zeitler does walk away, which I think he will get out there on the market. And I think a team is going to pull a Marvin Jones. I think they're going to throw 12 to 13 million at this guy per year just to sign him away. Because if the money is the same between a new location in Cincinnati, he's going to want to stay in Cincinnati. So I think that's what happens. But, you draft this guy at LSU, and he's a solid option. He provides flexibility. He could potentially even play left tackle after Witt leaves. So that's the guy that I see going in second. In third, I like this guy out of Oklahoma, and I think he kind of matches up somewhat to what the Bengals say that they really want. Now, this is the thing about my mock drafts. I don't base mock drafts off of what I think the Bengals are going to do. I try to base them off of stuff that they say, trends that they've done in the past. So, at number 3, we bring in a guy by the name of Dede Westbrook. Okay, so I was snooping around earlier this week, listening to some interviews and stuff, and Bengals coach, wide receiver James Urban, kind of stated that he has confidence in some of the Bengals wide receiver core, but they're looking for a guy that's going to take the top off of a defense to pair with AJ. Okay, so when I hear take the top off of the defense type of speed, look at this entire draft class and tell me a guy that's faster than Dede Westbrook. Please find him. I mean, the guy's highlight tape is like 98.9% deep bombs every play, and he has good hands. He's not one of those guys that's just super fast that just has brick hands and can't catch anything. To me, kind of reminds me somewhat of Tyreek Hill from this year. He can return punts. He can do a lot. He was a huge contributor for Oklahoma. He's pretty productive. The Bengals like guys that are productive and consistent. And he's a guy that could, potentially go as high as the second round, but he could also fall to the third round as well. But with this pick, I kind of made it right there. But I think that even if he was there in the second round, the Bengals could trade up depending on what they get from McCarron. But I didn't want to play hypotheticals and all of that, so I took him in third. He's projected to go there. He could go there. So I have them taking Dede Westbrook out of Oklahoma. Next, in the fourth round, I have them going with a linebacker, Kendall Beckwith, another guy out of LSU. And like I touched on earlier, when I was talking about Foster, outside of Vontaze Burfict, they don't have much talent there. Okay, they gave up 110 rushing yards per game. And I hear all of this talk about the stretch over how the Bengals played so great. You would have thought that these guys were like the 2000 Baltimore Ravens, okay? Now, I'm not saying they're bad, but let's look at that schedule, bro. let's look at some of them circumstances in some of them last couple of games. Let's just be real, okay? Let's not try to juice it up. The linebacking core, in my opinion, was the weakest unit on the team. Okay, and you got a lot of question marks there. You don't know whether Dansby is coming back. I don't think he necessarily is. I'm not sure. Um, you've got Raymond Luga, who's basically stole $6 million this year. You got Nick Vigil, who is somewhat promising. You got the curious case of Paul Dawson, where we don't even know if he's on the team anymore, he's not on the team, what is he doing, where is he at, so if Marquise Flowers right now is starting, fam, just based off of what we have, you need to drive a linebacker. I'm sorry. Okay, so that's where I brought in Kendall Beckwith. Number 4, why am I saying all of these mock drafts, bro? And we just acting like we don't need a kicker. Okay, like I said in the article, 2 words: Mike Nugent, draft a kicker. I don't care. Take one in the 4th round. Depending, and this draft was basically adding in those comp picks, which I think could possibly, one of them could actually end up being a 3rd round, maybe 2 of them. If Marvin Jones and Reggie, depending on how that formula works out, bro, you could have 2 3rd rounders. But man, we need a kicker so bad. I might think about one in the 3rd round with one of them comp picks, or the 4th round. But here I took the numbers reported off of Over the Cap, and I went with um, Daniel Carlson, kicker out of Auburn. So yeah, man, I'm tired of having nightmares of Mike Nugent missing field goals for the past 3 years. Let's go ahead and address that. And that brings me to my last one, which I only did 4 rounds, but guys that like Ohio State, like me, aren't going to be too happy with it. But I went with Devion Smith here. You're talking about a running back that's more so on the heavy side. I personally like Jeremy Hill. There's a lot of people bashing him right now. But and and I'll touch on Hill for a little bit, man. I know I'm gonna go against the grain of Who They Nation right now, but let's just be real, man. How good is the line in front of him? I mean, you show me where there were these holes where he's missing them, and I hear people talking about, oh, he's trying to dance so much. I mean, bro, you have to dance when there's nothing there. Okay, you can't make something out of nothing. Ask Todd Gurley. And you're talking about a guy in Jeremy Hill who plays in a system, in a 2-back system. Like, people are expecting this dude to have like 1,600 yards, and he plays with Gio. It's like, bruh, that's never gonna happen. Okay, but anyway, I still gave the Bengals a running back here just because Jeremy Hill is scheduled to be a free agent next year. I really wish that the fans would stop like ragging on the guy, because you've seen how that has affected guys here previously with Jermaine Gresham and stuff like that. It's actually caused some pretty decent people to leave. So I'm not ruling that out. They did extend Gio. I mean, we could see them potentially try to extend Hill. I really think that Gio and Hill work well together. But Gio's going to be out for an extended period of time. And then you have Rex Burkhead, who's kind of in a weird space right now with being a free agent, kind of wanting to play more, but has the opportunity to play more coming back because Gio's not there. Could possibly be the starter. So, I don't know. I kind of feel like Rex Burkhead may leave. But if he does leave, then we have Devion Smith, who's a big back like Hill. He's a power back. He plays with a lot of spunk. If Hill doesn't regain his form, he's a pretty good insurance policy. So that about wraps up my thoughts on the mock draft. But let's go back and rewind a bit to this national championship game. What a game, man! That was literally one of the best college football games I've seen in a while. Okay, and to be honest with you guys, I don't watch much college football outside of Ohio State. Um, Usually when I start watching, guys, it's based off of film, and that's where I really get the most of my familiarity of actual players from film. And I've been blessed to have luck with having a pretty keen eye on some guys that will be good, won't be good, blah, blah, blah. But, I really don't watch anything outside of the national championships or Ohio State games. And now that I live in Florida, sometimes I might catch a Florida State game every once in a blue moon or whatever. But I usually, for the most part, like watching the pros and watching my Bengals. So It's it was a good game to watch though, man. It really was. It really gave me flashes of It was kind of a different game, more so on the defensive side, but it kind of gave me flashes of USC Texas back in the day. I don't know that comparison has been made a lot, but it was a good game, man. It was hard fought from the first half. First half was kind of a snooze fest a little bit, but second half was amazing. But that game reaffirmed a couple things for me. Okay, things that I took away from that game. Number one, Reuben Foster is as advertised. Mama, that man is gonna be nasty in the league. Okay, 12 sacks. I mean not 12 sacks. That's crazy. Not 12 sacks. Excuse me. It's kind of late over here, but 12 tackles, one sack. I mean, what else could you really ask for from this man? Helicopter hit. The guy brought his lunch with him that day. And also Mike Williams. Now, I will be the first to admit, man, I wasn't too sold on Mike Williams. I didn't think that he wasn't good, but I just thought that comparing them to a guy like AJ Green was a reach. But to me, it's not much of a reach. He made great catches and everything. He's definitely solidified himself as a top receiver. But I think that game might have helped solidify him as a top five pick. Now, I may be wrong, but I see teams like Tennessee and a couple other teams picking him before they let him get to the Bengals. Before I was kind of like, I don't really want Mike Williams like that, like because we have so many holes. But after that game, I'm like, bro, I wouldn't mind Mike Williams. I started kind of drinking some of the Mike Williams Kool-Aid after he made a couple of those catches. But um, I still, after reevaluating everything, you know, and this was my thing. I was never down on Mike Williams. For the most part, I said that I don't care if you had Randy Moss there. If your quarterback's getting hit 50 times every time he drops back, you can't even get the ball to Mike Williams. And that was my main point with him. It wasn't that, I wouldn't take him. It's that, you have to fix the line first. So quarterback has to be able to sit in the pocket and be able to at least let a guy finish his route before he can do anything. So, like I said, it doesn't matter if you had Randy Moss there. If you don't have that line right, you got to get it right. But anyways, I think that he was a huge factor in that game. So I think that those were some guys to keep an eye on. Tim Williams really didn't do much in that game for me. I'm not even going to lie. Jonathan Allen was kind of surprisingly skep in that game too. So uh, these are guys that could potentially all be in play at 9. You're hearing guys like Reuben Foster, Mike Williams, Barnett all be considered at number 9. And I think that really depending on what the Bengals do in free agency will determine which guy they go with. But I really like all of it, man. All of those guys at 9, you can't really beat that. So I'm not gonna try to get on the whole ramble fest, but I want to touch on a couple other things that I've heard floating around, and I've heard people say that the Bengals should replace Ken Zampese. I don't agree with that, man. I really don't agree with that, and I'm gonna tell you why. You're talking about a guy who only had AJ Green and Tyler Eifert for 2 games. Okay, he's got a brand new offense with a rookie receiver and a free agent receiver who's never played with Andy Dalton before. He lost Marvin Jones, Mohamed Sanu. His offensive line went to crap. They sacked his quarterback 40 times. And they just were basically trying to learn their way. So how does that, you know, equal to a guy needing to be fired? Okay? I really don't get that. And at one point during the season, the Bengals, outside of their scoring, the Bengals were actually in like the top 10, the top 15 in offense. So the guy wasn't really that bad. I'm not saying total offense, but in passing offense and rushing offense, they weren't bad. They were top 15. It was the scoring offense that killed them. And to me, that more so had to do with the offensive line, more so per se, than the actual offense. Because you had a year where Andy Dalton put up 4,000 yards. So how was it Zampese's fault? So you have to think back when Paul Guenther played his came in at defensive coordinator. They were 20th in the league that first year. So give the guy some time. So that's how I see things playing out with him. But other than that, man, if there's anything else that you guys want me to talk about, definitely shoot me some comments. Follow me on Twitter at AMBA513. I'll definitely be here delivering a lot of my opinions on the draft, who the Bengals should get. I'll definitely do some stuff with Prime. But yeah, man, I'm really looking forward to this offseason, man, because it's a offseason where we could do a lot with compensation from picks and the AJ McCarron trade. So this is going to be a big offseason for the Bengals, and I look forward to being here. But like I said, like, subscribe. We're on iTunes. We're all over the place. Check us out. We're on YouTube, New Stripe City. But y'all be blessed, man, and have a great rest of your night. And we will be right back at it next time to discuss some more options. All right? Who Dey? All day, every day, and especially on Sunday.